This video is part of my Pink Letter series, but don't worry if you haven't seen my first video. This video can absolutely stand by itself, and you don't have to watch that previous video. This video, I want to discuss the possibility that Mance Rayder wrote the Pink Letter, not Ramsay Bolton. If you saw the Ramsay video, skip to the timestamp shown on the screen. If not, here's a refresher about the Pink Letter to give context to this theory. The Pink Letter, or Bastard Letter as it's sometimes referred to as, is the letter delivered to Lord Commander Jon Snow at Castle Black in A Dance with Dragons. The letter itself is sealed with pink wax, which is used by House Bolton and is addressed to Bastard. When Jon reads the letter, it says, "Bastard, your false king is dead, bastard. He and all his hosts were smashed in 7 days of battle. I have his magic sword. Tell his red whore, your false king's friends are dead, their heads upon the walls of Winterfell. Come see them, bastard. Your false king lied, and so did you. You told the world you burned the king beyond the wall. Instead, you sent him to Winterfell to steal my bride from me. I will have my bride back. If you want Mance Rayder back, come and get him. I have him in a cage for all the North to see. Proof of your lies. The cage is cold, but I made him a warm cloak from the skins of the 6 whores who came with him to Winterfell. I want my bride back. I want the false king's queen. I want his daughter and his red witch. I want this wildling princess. I want his little prince, the wildling babe. And I want my reek. Send them to me, bastard, and I will not trouble you or your black crows. Keep them from me, and I will cut out your bastard's heart and eat it. Ramsay Bolton, true-born lord of Winterfell." So this letter is basically saying Stannis' army was destroyed after 7 days of fighting, Stannis is dead, and Ramsay has his sword, Lightbringer. Mance is alive, captured, and caged, and Ramsay knows who he is. Ramsay skinned the spearwives that went with Mance and used their skins to make a cloak for Mance to keep himself warm. Ramsay currently does not have possession of Theon or fake Arya, and he is demanding for Jon to give up fake Arya, Theon, Stannis' wife and child, Vale, Mance's baby, and Melisandre, or he will come after Jon and the Night's Watch. Before speculating on who wrote the letter, let's recap what is going on in the North when this letter is received by Jon. Stannis has left the Wall and begun his campaign of the North. By the time a blizzard begins, Stannis has marched from Deepwood Motte that he successfully took back from the Ironborn, and is going towards Winterfell. Last we know, Stannis is at the Crofters' village, 3 days' ride from Winterfell, and is preparing to attack the Boltons. While Stannis was heading south of the Wall to begin his campaign of the North, Jon sent Mance Rayder, glamored to look like Rattleshirt, and 6 spearwives to Winterfell to rescue who he believes is his sister, but is really Jane Poole, pretending to be Arya Stark. The last we hear about Mance and his spearwives is in A Dance with Dragons, in Theon chapter number 1. In it, Mance, disguised as Abel, sings for Roose, and the spearwives try to rescue Jane. They get her and Theon to the parapets of Winterfell, but when Jane starts screaming, they are discovered. The spearwives fight, with some deaths occurring, and Theon throws himself and Jane over the battlements. Theon and Jane are discovered by Mors Umber and brought to Stannis Baratheon. Stannis keeps Theon with him at the Crofters' village and decides to send who he thinks is Arya to the Wall. When Jon reads the letter he believes, despite others such as Tormund not believing what the writer said to all be true, that some of the letter must be true, and decides to march on Winterfell. Very shortly after announcing that decision, Jon is stabbed to death by members of the Night's Watch. Alright, so with that recap, let's get into the theory that Mance Rayder wrote the Pink Letter. First, why would anyone even begin to think someone besides Ramsay wrote the letter? He signed it, right? Well, as we know, George is a tricky man that may or may not feed on our tears. And he likes to leave clues, and there are a lot of clues Ramsay didn't write this letter, which I talked about last video. To briefly go over them, the handwriting and ink may be different than Ramsay's usual style, there's no scrap of skin attached with the letter, Ramsay's MO, nor is the talk of heads on the wall his preferred method of killing. He likes to flay. There is also no seal on the letter, which Ramsay would use, and it is a bit suspicious he didn't use the wax color of the Starks to rub in Jon's face, we have Winterfell. Then of course there are word choices, which I'll get into later, and how they relate to Mance. What is weird when it comes to Ramsay is he writes Reek instead of Theon, calls men of the Night's Watch crows, and uses the word whore. But again, I talked about that in part 1. So let's get into the evidence of why Mance, the king beyond the wall, wrote the pink letter, not Ramsay. The letter itself has a lot of clues that it could be Mance. Let's look at each one. First, Mance would be aware of everything written in the letter. This is important because few people know all these details, making Mance one of the few likely suspects for writing the letter. Besides knowing what is written in the letter, Mance would also gain the knowledge he needed to write the letter through being around Ramsay at Winterfell and talking to Theon. We know the Spearwives tell Theon that Abel/Mance wants to speak to him. Being around Ramsay and talking with Theon is important when I later talk about some word choices in the letter. Next, the mention of Black Crow in the letter is interesting. Black Crows is a wildling term through and through. Yes, Ramsay could use that slang, and we have heard people of the Seven Kingdoms call them crows, but it's something most attributed to the wildlings, and a term Mance would definitely use when talking about the men of the Night's Watch. Then there's the use of False King. False King is mentioned by Cersei and Wyman Manderly once in the books, but mostly by Stannis and Melisandre. What stands out is that Mance was present during Melisandre calling Mance a false king, which probably rubbed Mance the wrong way just a little bit. How interesting is it that if Mance is the author, he used false king? After all, he was reported to be dead and called a false king. Then he writes a letter where he calls Stannis, the man responsible for his death, a false king and dead. Almost seems like Mance is thumbing his nose a little at Stannis while also getting what he wants. Turnabout, after all, is fair play. What about the sentence in the letter, "You told the world you burned the king beyond the wall"? That sounds very similar to Mance, again disguised as Rattleshirt, comment to Jon in A Dance with Dragons. He tells Jon he burned the man he had to burn, for all the world to see. So we're hearing more of Mance's language in the letter. Then there's the line later in the letter, "If you want Mance Rayder back, come and get him. I have him in a cage for all the North to see." For all the North to see sounds very similar to for all the world to see. This just sounds like Mance. Next, the use of bastard and Red Witch. It's true Ramsay could call Melisandre a Red Witch, and that Ramsay would be likely to use the word bastard as an insult. We know he did not like being called a bastard. However, very few people use the term Red Witch in the series. Mance is one of those few people. He also refers to Jon Snow as bastard. In A Dance with Dragons, he tells Jon, while glamored to look like Rattleshirt, "Ask your Red Witch, bastard." Another time, he tells Jon, still as Rattleshirt, "I'll range for you, bastard." Mance already knows Jon is sensitive about being a bastard from their first encounter when Jon, trying to get Mance to believe he was a Night's Watch deserter, said, "And did you see where I was seated, Mance? Did you see where they put the bastard?" Throwing bastard in there to get Jon to action, or just because Mance is still pissed about his betrayal, would be in line for Mance. We also know that Mance does not like being under Melisandre's power. He has nightmares from it. So calling her a Red Witch, or other nasty names, can be him getting out some pent-up anger. Moving on, there might be something in the final threat of the letter. "I will cut out your bastard's heart and eat it." Ramsay does have a habit of making gruesome threats, but he's usually about the flaying. Not that Ramsay can't vary it up. We've seen in the books he can do other forms of torture. But what's interesting about the threat is that Mance has said something similar before. In A Storm of Swords, the Magnar of Then says, in reference to Jon, "His heart may still be black." And Mance replies, "Then cut it out." So Mance has talked about cutting out Jon's heart before. Threatening to cut out his heart might go a bit further than that though. If Mance knew Jon was a skin changer, we know eating a skin changer's heart, or getting rid of it, can make it so they can't have a second life, or at least has some impact on it. Varamir makes that very clear in A Dance with Dragons. Even if Jon doesn't know this, it could still be a threat that a wildling would be aware of, and therefore make. Of course, eating an enemy's heart is seen in other locations in the world of Ice and Fire, just not usually used in the civilized Seven Kingdoms. Keeping on the theme of torture, it is weird the letter mentions putting the spearwives' heads on the wall. Ramsay likes to flay. Mance may only have minimal knowledge of Ramsay's practices, and he crafts the letter by what he hears and knows, which is perhaps why the letter says, "The cage is cold, but I have made him a warm cloak from the skins of the 6 whores who came with him to Winterfell." Mance is by Ramsay when he says, "Give me his name. Point him out to me, boy, and I will make you a cloak of his skin." Mance hears this threat and puts it in his letter, assuming this is a Ramsay thing, which it is. What Mance wouldn't know is Ramsay likes to send pieces of flayed skin in his letter. So though he claims the spearwives have been flayed to make a skin cloak, he makes the error of not sending any skin, which if the spearwives were flayed, there would have been plenty for Ramsay to send. Next, it's a little weird Mance is the only one referred to by his actual name in the letter. Why just Mance? Why does he get the special treatment? If Ramsay is the author, he's being awfully odd about what he calls people. Is this George winking at us that Mance is the author? George loves his little clues and hints. Is this Mance's way of indicating to someone else that he's the author? There's tinier clues as well, but they might be overanalyzing, but still fun to consider. Notice the only 2 colors mentioned in the letter are red and black. Mance's cloak, which he so loved and claimed was his inspiration to desert the Night's Watch, is red and black. Black cloak from the Night's Watch, stitched back together by red silk. A hint? Or coincidence? So there is clearly Mance's words and language in the letter, but there is also Ramsay's because Mance is around Ramsay at Winterfell, and he also gets information from Theon and the Spearwives. All this evidence points to Mance being the author, but there are some things that cast that into doubt. The last time we read about the rescue mission, they all weren't doing so well. The Spearwives were discovered trying to get fake Arya out of Winterfell. As it is known Mance is with them, he would likely be taken as well. Did some of the Spearwives and or Mance manage to get to safety? And when did Mance have time to write this letter? Did he have access to ravens? How did he manage to get access to ravens, write a letter, and get it sent? This letter is clearly trying to get Jon and the wildlings to go south, but Mance lying and plotting to bring the wildlings south would go against his deal with Melisandre. That puts his son's life in danger, something he wouldn't want unless he figured out they switched the babies. It is probable that Mance has talked to Vale, who knows about the switch, and so he's aware his son is safe. After all, Mance makes it very clear he could climb any tower anytime, saying, "A man who has climbed the wall 100 times can climb in a window easy enough," perhaps pointing to him climbing up to talk to Vale and plotting with her. What is Mance hoping to get out of tempting Jon or his wildlings to go south, though? Well, Mance would have a very big reason for trying to lure Jon to the south. He knows that Jon will have to bring the wildlings below the wall, and when they are near Winterfell, they will answer to him. And if we're under the belief that Mance knows his son is with Gilly, this makes sense. There's no reason to honor his deal or keep his wildlings at the wall. Mance is likely in a tough position right now, and causing someone to come down to contest Ramsay and weaken his hold on Winterfell makes Mance safer. Some point out that Mance must know it will take a long time for his wildlings to arrive. He is in trouble. That's a long time of waiting for them. Hopefully Mance is in a really secure spot. But as we've seen with certain Northerners, travel can be easier when you're born and live in certain environments. The wildlings may consider the current weather to be a joke compared to what they've dealt with beyond the wall. Maybe traveling south is like a dream vacation compared to what they've endured. Mance has to know with the food storage that a lot of them would also die from starvation and maybe cold though. Yes, they could take food from the Watch's storage, but would they really want to take that much food away from their children? Something Mance probably wouldn't want. Why would Mance risk his people to claim Winterfell? Probably because he's backed into a corner or because his original goal was always to bring his people south. But not all his people would go to Winterfell, would they? He'd be leaving behind wildling children at the wall, now much less defended against another attack. Is Mance willing to do that? So how did this all go down? When did Mance actually write the letter? Where is Mance right now? And are the Umbers potentially involved? In the next pink letter video, I want to talk about some of the speculation on how exactly all of this went down. So thank you so much for watching. Please like the video, subscribe, and come back for more videos.